Hello, I have here the latest LEGO Star Wars Ultimate Collector Series X-Wing. There are a bunch of balloons in the background because I've been celebrating 10 years of full-time LEGO, including 2 years over on Twitch, where I did the live build of this 1949 piece set. I paid $240 US for this, and if you see a View Products link on the video, you can click that and see some places you can buy it. If you use one of those links, I might get a tiny little commission to help support what I do. This measures over 22 inches in length, or 57 centimeters approximately. It is 17 inches from wingtip to wingtip, or about 43 centimeters. First thing that's important to do is just to look at it from some different angles with the S-foils locked in attack position, because it looks really good. As a Star Wars fan, I find great joy just in looking at this. Interestingly, because the included stand has this angled always back quite a bit, it actually looks better from some more rearward angles. You're able to see more of the thing that you've actually built here. Strangely, from the main angles that you would expect to display it at, with the plaque facing forward, yeah, you just don't quite see the full bulk and the majesty of it, honestly. Just for the sake of comparison, I have the last smaller scale X-Wing over here to the side. And yes, there are a couple of extra minifigs hanging out on the wings. No worries there, but yeah, quite a size difference and quite a bit of shaping difference as well, which we'll get into. But this definitely has all of the presence that you would want, the visual presence. It's a little bit, it's similar in scale to the previous UCS ones, but overall has more visual bulk. And a lot of that, well, some of that comes from the engine main sections here, but a lot of that also comes from the fuselage. The nose section and all along, all the way up to the cockpit, has been thickened up significantly. And that's one of the bigger, more substantive changes here. The nose cone honestly looks a little bit awkward, especially up close. I think from a distance it makes a little bit more sense, but the bulb area is here approximated by not only the end, but also these tiles here. So all of this is supposed to be part of that one assembly that gives it that extra bulbous nose to it. I think white is not a bad color. It just depends on which depiction of the X-Wing that you're trying to look at. And this, given that we come with a blue lightsaber there, is not intended to represent a Return of the Jedi, more darkened and scored and burnt and dusty and swamp stained version of it. And I think based on the pictures that I've seen, the lighter color for the nose is more correct. All of this here, interestingly, is angled in at the top, angled in at the bottom as well. And then you have the suggestion of the taper towards the tip, but there's also a distal taper to it. That's as you go from farther back towards the front. I'm going to leave this on its stand for right now and just show you this from the other side. So it's significantly wider down here and then narrows up quite a bit. It's the first time that they've gotten all of those angles together, and it's difficult to do in Lego form. It also leaves a very awkward overlap at either end, which the designer has tried to fix or deal with to the best of their ability by attaching the nose cone with a pair of Technic axles. So it's actually attached on, and then it tries to fill up this gap here. And I think it does a pretty good job, but there's still little gaps here, a little gap right there that's kind of obvious. And then down here, there's a gap. Here, there's a gap. You can actually see a little bit of the Technic frame on the inside right there also. Those are just all a little bit awkward. They add up when you look at it, especially up close. A little gap under here. Now, that is definitely nitpicking, but you compare that to some of the things that Lego has done in the past. Compare it to the Razor Crest, for example, and you're seeing a lot more what I would consider to be flaws here, just really, really little ones. By comparison, this back here, this is great. These are two completely different sections at different angles, but those flow together nicely. And I like the use of the tiles and really the physical build of this. This uses very few stickers, and I will show you that. As we come around to the top, well, that's silly. That is an actual minifig scale R2-D2. Of course, we'll take a closer look at that with the Luke pilot minifigure later on, but it's just so tiny it absolutely looks comical and not in a good way, because this is supposed to be a collector model. So that's very, very weird and awkward to me. This is nice though. All the small detailing coming across the top is the Greebling, as ILM originally called it, is nice. Got one printed piece down there. It just feels good to me. And also the back end of this. Similarly, it's filled up well. You've got nice angling to these side panels here. You don't want to put too much pressure on these panels. They're not attached too well, but I think it's fine for what this is, for the type of model that this is intended to be as a display model. And again, they make for some nice shaping there. Now the engines are interesting because they've changed these things so much. The rears actually do droop a fair bit, and they pull the wings down at the rear with them. But I think the build is pretty good, and it's not at all annoying. Putting all these things together here, right at the end for the outlet, it just comes together very, very quickly and simply. This structure here is repeated side to side, and it's simple and it's quick. A little bit blocky back here, but that's okay. To get to the inlets, I actually came up with a new piece for 2023, which I like quite a bit, but it doesn't feel particularly Lego-like. It's another one of those things that kind of pushes the limits of the system and what's considered the system. These are, as viewed from the top, 3x3, 1/4 round panels. See, so it's actually studs on the side. These are pushed directly down, and then these diverter vanes here or splitter vanes are just tiles pushed directly into the plate right there, which is, for the record, has never, ever, ever been an illegal technique. A lot of folks are confused about that. To put plates in sideways would be an illegal technique per Lego's own personal standard, internal standards. But the tiles are just fine. It works fine, doesn't cause any undue stress on the elements. And these are arranged in such a way to try to limit how much you see the undersides of the tiles. So the ones up here are mostly showing you the top sides of tiles. You come down here, they are also doing the same thing, and only you see the underside from just certain, can't even really see it there. So that's pretty good. You got a little Baraki eye there in the center. That's all done up pretty nicely. But I'm going to return to the concept and the general theme of gaps. So all this on the inside of the wing is nice. The lower one, that's one of the few large stickers used in the set right here. At the end, the other side has another sticker to get that pattern in there, which is fine. I think it works out well. This is not a new piece right here. It was introduced a season ago or so in the Harry Potter line, but it is an inverted tile, 4x8 in size, which is really, really interesting. It's all hollow in the middle though, which made it a little bit tricky at some points to assemble this, but it's just something you have to get used to. But look inside of there. That gets really gappy really quickly. This right here is fine, but back in there, like I can put my finger all the way down in there. Plus, looking at it from an angle like this, let's bring it actually around here. I'm just trying to give you a good idea of what it looks like to see this from some different angles. You can see the Technic mechanism in there. Now, I like the feel and the kind of brilliant design of the S-foil mechanism. Let me show you how it works right now. It's just this right here. And you just loosen it. Oh, it got stuck a little bit. There we go. It's actually balanced from side to side with the lower left wing connected to the upper right. So these two move together, and then these two move together, the upper left and the lower right move together. And it is so simple inside of there. And it's something that you have to experience during the build. There are 2 rubber bands used, again, interestingly, to help bring everything back together. But for the most part, it is, oh boy. We're going to stop and talk about this in just a second. But let me just finish with this real quick. It is mostly just using a simple push mechanism. You got a cam inside of there that's just pushing against a couple of Technic ball end pieces, and it works pretty well. However, it does leave things rather loose on display, and I'll show you some major issues with with holding this and trying to swoosh it around if you want to look at it up closer. But with the S foils closed up, now look at these gaps here. They're huge and they're very, very visible. I'm not trying to rag on this thing and dog on it and, just say bad things about it, but I am pointing out things that I like and things that I don't like at the same time. Speaking of which, that thing that I just talked about and those sounds that you heard and the whole ship kind of falling down a little bit, let's talk about the stand. So here I've restored everything back to its original correct form. Everything's fixed, everything's fine, everything's nice and secure. And I'm just gonna simulate a little bit of walking around the room by just kind of shaking this a little bit. Because as you move through any sort of house or anything, things move a little bit, things settle over time as well. The earth itself even shakes a little bit, even if you're not in an earthquake prone area. And over time, sometimes just completely spontaneously, without you even being there, these pieces here, these curved 2x2 pieces, will start to come apart. I can already see gaps appearing in them, and just a little bit of side to side. I've actually had this happen when it's just sitting there. You saw it earlier in real time while I was doing something else. They're coming apart. And in my personal opinion, this is one of the most embarrassing production issues that Lego has ever had in a product that's made it to market. Those pieces simply fall apart just like that. This was first try. I didn't have to retake this multiple times. This happens all the time, and anybody who reviews this set with spending any amount of time with it is going to encounter this issue with the first production run. It is an abysmal design. It is so embarrassing. These things pop off there. This one here is only attached with 2 studs. The other one's attached with 4 studs. But there's just too much twisting that can occur in there. Now, I've already heard through the official marketing channels. Oh boy. Yeah, I was just gonna go grab the other piece, but we've already heard through the official marketing channels that the designers are aware of this issue and they're going to issue a fix for it. My question is, how on earth did it not get caught before now? I just look at that. It's so simple. I'm not being rough on this at all. Just letting it sit there over time. Every day, this will fall apart just from vibrations in the floor. It is so bizarre. All right, enough about that for now. From the front, I wanted to point out that the wings do droop a bit. I already mentioned that the engines droop and the wings actually angle back a little bit. They also droop noticeably as viewed from the front. And you're also left with this gap in between the S foils. A lot of people are pretty upset about that gap. It doesn't bother me as much on display, though I would much prefer to not have that there. But I think that most of the time, most folks are going to display this with the S foils in attack position. I think that when this is closed up, it looks pretty good. You got the nice little bit of overlap right in here that occurs with those shield pieces or shield cover pieces originally introduced for Nexonites coming together. But the droop does concern me a bit. And again, looking at it from the sides, maybe you don't see it quite as obviously from this angle here. I think this side is drooping a little bit more, but that is something that's common to many X-Wings, including the regular minifig scale ones. And you can see this top wing is also angled back. I'm personally not too worried about that, but it is something that is noticeable if you're really spending time with this. While we're over here, check out the lasers. I think the laser cannons are nice. They're clean, and I appreciate not having the slots from the double long version of the Technic spacers, but there's once again a little gap there. It feels like sliding the beads back and forth on an abacus a little bit. So that's just a little bit awkward, but it's not bad. It's another thing that doesn't bother me too much, but did want to point it out. These tips, the emitters here though, are nice with the flipper used there and the relatively recently introduced modified 1x1 with the bar on either side, little antenna just at the end. It's a little bit fragile, but it's a nice design and you can get the angle just where you want it. To look at and talk about the cockpit, I would love to just put this down on the ground, but it really doesn't sit on the ground properly. It's not designed to sit on the ground in any way, shape, or form. Not only does it not have landing gear, it's just not particularly secure that way. So it's not recommended. This is all printed, thank goodness. All printed. Nice big piece. As time goes by, we were able to see more easily just how this is the incorrect shape. It actually tapers towards the back. It should taper towards the front, but I personally have gotten used to this piece. Maybe one day we'll get something more accurate. All this detailing right here is done with a large sticker, and there's a final sticker right there for the front console. You got the flight yoke here, got the flight computer, visor or display device to go up against your eye here, and it can be slid in and out. And the chair is a little bit awkward because it looks like it's minifig sized. However, you cannot put a minifig in that seat. Well, I mean, you can put a minifig in that seat, but you can't close the canopy down. Even something that small, it's just, it's gonna hit. That's as far as you can go. It's weird. It's fine. It's not intended to be minifig scale. The whole thing isn't, but yeah, it's just, it's awkward. You know what else is awkward? As I close that up, this has some scuffs in it, but it's not bad. Some people have gotten some that are pretty badly scratched up. You know why? For some reason, this is another thing I do not understand how it got through. I really don't. This piece, this exclusive large windscreen piece for one of the Ultimate Collector Series sets of the year is thrown loose into the box for everyone. It is not even in a bag. Remember the Ecto 1 had its own special coating, like an extra sheet, a plastic protective sheet over its special windscreen so that it wouldn't get scratched up, and that was amazing. It was wonderful to see. They did the opposite with this. Not only does it not have a protective sheet, it's just in the box. So if you happen to get one that has had the box turned more than once or twice in shipping, you're probably going to have some major scuffing on there. That's nonsensical, absolutely nonsensical. And it's just going to cost Lego money because they're going to have to replace so many of them through customer service. They have really good customer service. They will replace stuff if you call them and you have a legitimate complaint with your item arriving damaged. But that's going to cost them so much more than just putting this in its own little baggie, or better yet, having a protective sheet over it and then putting that in a baggie. Another exclusive printed piece in this set, first ever for the Star Wars line, second ever period for this type of thing, is the plaque, the 8x16 plaque. They promised that they were going to do them printed from now on, from a while ago on, and they are doing that. So the Ferrari Technic set was the first, this is the second, and it looks good to me. A lot of people have complained about the fact that there is a mold mark right there. That mold mark has been known about for quite some time, and it's not bothering me personally. I would rather it not be there, but it doesn't line up with any of the print. It doesn't really cause an issue with the display to me. One thing that is definitely an issue, however, is the fact that in the marketing photos, the official photos for this set, that is reduced in visibility. It's there on all the pictures, but it appears that they tried to reduce the noticeability of it in those official images. They did not delete it. They did not try to hide it completely, but they did dull it down, make it less obvious. Not something I'm going to make a huge deal about. Another thing that a viewer, while I was building this, pointed out is that the length that's listed here is different than the length that's listed in the manual for this very set. I can understand there being confusion with canonical stuff in the Star Wars world because, well, there's a lot of confusion with canonical stuff in the Star Wars world. There's a lot of inconsistent information about there, including from official sources, but at least within one set, they should have been consistent between the two prints. Speaking of prints, this is the definitive Lego Episode 4 Red 5 Luke in pilot suit, because it has dual molded legs for the boots and it has arm printing. And as usual, has one of those fantastically printed Rebel helmets. These are always so good in my personal opinion. And the printing is nice and straight on that. Good quality all the way through. The lightsaber blade is nice and consistent as they continue to be. The hilts have gotten past their little bit of quality issues. Once again, they're nice and consistent with the silver plating on there. Got the pocket printed on this side. The print on the back is pretty good. I think you could add a little bit more opacity for the lighter colors, but overall it looks very, very nice to me. And you get the R2-D2 with the print on the back as well, same as the one from the Trash Compactor set. Once again, as usual, in the American market, whatever factory does our printing is always bad at printing astromech heads. Almost always bad. I've gotten especially bad luck, but I'm not alone in that at all. Brothers and sisters across the pond over in Europe almost never see that because their factories actually do a good job because Lego is able to do a good job. For some reason, they don't feel it's necessary to do a good job over here. This one's not bad. This is one of the better, less wonky astromech heads that I have ever gotten. But you can still see that the bottom line is clearly crooked. And that's one of the best that I personally have ever gotten. Seriously. Got the alternate face with the visor raised there. Put that, just kind of frame it up with the helmet. You can see just a little bit of the visor peeking out underneath. This is all good, with the exception of the wonkiness over there. Lastly, these are the leftover pieces, and it's nice that there aren't a whole lot of them because that indicates that there are not a whole lot of little pieces used in the set in the first place. It's just focusing a little bit more on giving you good value for the part count, at least, just in how it's designed. And this is what the sticker sheet looked like. Just 4. They're completely rectangular, easy to apply, and I think that they are good. All right, before I talk about price and value, I do want to point out a mistake of mine. I was complaining about the fact that the stand can only lean the craft in a certain way, but in fact, you can put this, even with the S-foils locked in attack position, you can put this on sideways or backwards on the stand. You might just need to adjust slightly the angles of the little like flash hider things on the emitters so it doesn't drag against the ground like that, but you can put it at this angle. You can even have it angled down. You're just not going to have the plaque facing towards you. I do have to be careful about those 2x2 pieces that want to fly off, but look at this. You can even do it this way. Potentially, yeah. So that might be useful. Again, the plaque is not going to be facing you, but you can probably customize that fairly simply, just a little bit if you or separate that out. But it is a more usable stand than I thought, with the exception of the parts that want to automatically destroy themselves. Now, price. It is $240 US. That's how much I paid for it. It is 240 euros, 210 pounds UK. And let me get you one more. Sorry, I didn't get this ready in advance. It's $320 Canadian, which translates to $236 US. So again, just a few dollars less. I don't have a problem with that, personally. This thing's pretty big. And it is a proper Ultimate Collector Series model. You're not going to get a model this big of a Star Wars thing for that price. Certainly not this massive and this complex from another company. I don't think so. Not that I've seen. Not even close. This is not a bad deal, at least in my opinion. Now, one thing that I didn't do in the studio was show you swooshability. I want to show you that now. As you can see, I can hold it with just literally 2 fingers. So my middle finger and my thumb are enough to hold this. This is swooshable. But once you start swooshing it, you encounter this. Let me close those S-foils. That's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling at all. Now, if you need to support this thing a little bit from the front, just put another hand gently underneath here. Just don't try to grab it from the sides. As I mentioned, the side panels are not attached particularly that well. You just don't want to be rough with it, but this is fine. I think this is perfectly fine to pick it up and to admire it from different angles and look at it and stuff. It works. Now, speaking of admiring it from different angles, offline I spent quite some time looking at pictures of the actual X-Wing models from the movies, plural. And the more I look at them and the more carefully I examine the proportions, the more I realize that the wings on this that seemed way too stubby are actually very close to correct. The overall wing span of this model is very, very close to correct. As a matter of fact, most of the proportions are very, very close to correct. There are a couple of things that really throw off the appearance of the relative sizes of things, though. One of the things is that the fuselage is a bit thick. It's a bit thicker than it ought to be. I think it's forgivably so, given that this is Lego, and there are some pretty complex things that had to be done to give this the distal taper plus the chamfering from the sides, and what is it? 3 angles? Yeah, it's angled on 3 axes, right? So, and given that it's Lego, I'm okay with that. It's a little bit thick here, but that does contribute to the wings looking smaller. Also, more importantly, I think the engines are just too far out, which means that what you see of free wing right here, this section, that's too short. That should be longer. But the distance from the center line to the lasers is very remarkably close. Most of the proportions are pretty good. The R2 isn't off as, the more I've looked at it, the R2 isn't as far off as I thought, but it's still pretty comical given that that is literally a minifig scaled R2 that, we're used to it for that purpose. Also, the more I look at this, the more it droops. This laser is drooping a lot now. A couple of these engines are drooping a lot. Oh yeah, this one too. It's actually pulling, again, it's pulling the entire wing back. So let me just put this back on its stand for right now and wrap up a little bit. We'll do that. Yeah. Overall, I like what I see. Overall, as a Star Wars fan for over 40 years now. Wow. Scary. This feels pretty right to me. I can, obviously I've had a number of nitpicks about it. There are a lot of gaps that I would prefer not to see, especially just knowing that this is made by a team of absolute masters of their craft. And I've seen, some sets that are incredibly good. And this one has some issues. The stand, how that happened, I don't know. The fact that it's so floppy when you pick it up really doesn't feel good. But I'm not concerned about it falling apart or anything. It's just, it has the droop issues, but it's probably been addressed decently well, if not as best they can. I'm sure that, some serious thought and engineering was put into dealing with that stuff. And the canopy shape is what it is. It continues to try to fit into standard Lego geometry better than a new one would, but hopefully one day we will get a new one and they'll have enough parts available in total, including probably some new wedge plates or wedge slopes to be able to fit underneath there for the forward portion of the interior to make that work, with the more realistic style. I ended up not being bothered by these studs on the side at all throughout the review process, looking at this, keeping in mind that this is a Lego thing, which I'm very, very well aware of. I don't need it to be completely studless. In the pictures, the studs really seemed obvious to me because I think they were using a relatively wide angle, much of the time, relatively wide angle lens, just like you're seeing right here, right now. Distorts things a lot, but it put a lot of focus right here, right in this section, right in the center of the shots. and made the fuselage look bigger than it actually is, and made the studs seem a little bit more obvious than they actually are. It doesn't bother me. You can replace those though with tiles. For the most part, I think almost, if not all, almost all of that can be replaced with tiles right here to make that smoother, if you would like. But I'm fine with the decision that they went with here to go with the longer plates that provide a good connection between the subassembly bits underneath as you put together multiple sections to create these long panels here. The nose shaping, first of all, the assembly of it is really cool underneath. What has to be done to make all these angles come together is cool. You'll see it if you build it. The nose shaping I can get past. I actually find myself more bothered by the gaps than I am by the shape of the bulb here. It's not that bad. It's just that the whole fuselage is too wide, just by a little bit, in the front. But so many of the things about this are improved design and proportion wise over the last one. It's shocking. I was heavily biased in favor of the previous design just because, well, I'm used to it. It's been around for 10 years now. I'm used to looking at pictures of it. But this is better. This is a better looking thing. It could have been better still. Looking at you, gaps to the engines, between the fuselage and the engines. And I can't say enough about how ridiculous the stand issue is. Something is dramatically wrong at Lego. They need to slow down or something. They shouldn't be letting things through like that. And lastly, that canopy being loose in the box is completely unacceptable. Seriously, Lego needs to slow down and evaluate their steps, their review processes end to end, and really earlier in the process have a simulation of a physical simulation of a completed kit, and have folks who are not part of the development of a specific kit look at that as a product, as a completed product, a simulation of it, a prototype essentially of a completed kit with, in the box, the parts in the box, and go through the process of building it earlier on and identify a lot of these things. Because if they don't, these are relatively minor things right now, but if they don't slow down and start fixing more of these types of issues, it's frightening for them. They could get into a very, very, very bad spot to let stuff like that get through on a top of the line flagship set like this. Just imagine a few years from now continuing to let quality slip on just their mainline stuff. They could have a big, big problem on their hand, possibly even something safety related. We don't want to get to that. We want Lego to do well. We want them to be successful. We want them to put out good products for at least somewhat reasonable prices. I cannot recommend against this. It's better than the last in most ways, but still has its issues. Those are my thoughts for now. Thank you very much for watching. Hope this was valuable to you, and I'll talk to you again soon.